Hello, my friends. I am super excited for today's workshop. We are going to be talking about overcoming the February doldrums of homeschooling, those days that we feel overwhelmed and like the winter is never going to end. So I'm excited to go through this with you today. Make sure that you have a piece of paper or a journal and a pen so that you can we're going to be doing some reflections. And so I want you to be able to write down some of your thoughts as we're going and share them in the chat as well. Okay, so overcoming the homeschool winter blues. So my first question for y'all is, am I the only one who drags in the winter and feels like, oh my gosh, like everything feels slower? Does anybody else feel that way? Or am I it? And maybe I am. Although if you're on today, or listening later, it's probably because you feel this way too. The reality is, I've talked to a lot of homeschooling families, and it seems to hit in February where like you look and you're like, okay, Christmas is over, and it's kind of far away from Christmas and the magic of Christmas, and spring still is not quite on the horizon yet. And there's not really anything to look forward to for a while. And there's just this like heaviness in February, which I have learned is totally normal. So if you do feel that way, if you do feel like you're dragging and you're like, we made all these goals in September and we haven't accomplished anything, and my kids are still fighting, and I still feel like I'm losing. Totally normal, particularly in February. It just has a feeling of heaviness about it. And that seems to be normal for February. When we were in public school, I felt it then too. And as a teacher, I felt it then because I was like, spring break is so far away. And Christmas break is so far behind me. And I'm just stuck in the middle, right? So if you feel that way, know that you are absolutely not alone. Okay, so there's 4 things I want to talk about to kind of overcoming these winter blues, and some 4 actionable items that we can do today that may help with those blues. So the first thing is shrink the day. We have to remember winter is a low energy season. Everything is dormant with the world. Bears are hibernating, animals are hibernating, and nature has given us like permission to slow things down. What happens often is we want to have September's energy in February, and it's the reality is it's still dark outside. It still is cold in a lot of places. There's not as much you can do. Now, if you're like in Arizona, you're like, oh, actually, this is when we get out, right? That's great. For a lot of other people, though, it's a harder time, especially if you're Midwest, you're up north. It tends to be a little bit tougher. So remember, it's a low energy season. So some of the things that we can do is, if we can shrink our day, like choose, rather than thinking, I want to push harder, scale it down, but scale it down wisely. Burnout often comes from trying to run, as I mentioned before, a September schedule in a February body. So if you can shorten your lessons. Now, if you're already like shortening and deschooling, this one, you might be like, our day is already shrunk as much as possible. That's great. Keep your days short. That's great. Keep going, because there's going to be some other things that you can do. But if you are finding that you've kind of like added extra things for your kids because you're like, no, they need more, and yet you're feeling that February heaviness, then what you can do is cut your day. Shorten it. Think of like, what are the non-negotiable subjects? And can we do those? And can we do our subjects in short bursts rather than long drawn out lessons for those of y'all, especially who use different curriculums? Momentum is going to come from success, not from endurance. I find that my kids in the wintertime tend to lag a little bit more than they normally do. I mean, kids will lag anyway, but it tends to be worse in the winter. So some things that you can do. Write 3 non-negotiables for the day. Set a 90-minute homeschool cap for the week. So every day you're like, we're going to only do homeschooling for 90 minutes each day. And then we're going to do other things. You can end the day when the work is done, right? You have your non-negotiables. When the work is done, be done. And give yourself permission to be done when the work is done and not feel like, oh no, I have to do more, or I'm going to be a loser homeschool mom and my kids are going to end up under a bridge homeless. Remember, like, we are in a cross country meet. This is a marathon. It is not a sprint. Okay. And so it's okay to cut things shorter. It's fine. Maybe another idea is you can change how you teach one subject for the week. So instead of looking at history books, you look at documentaries. One of the things that I'm trying, and we're actually starting this next week, my 13-year, so when my 9-year-old goes to her enrichment program, my 13-year-old is at home. He doesn't have his enrichment program on the same day as her. I wanted them all to be on the same day. I've done that in the past. It didn't work out this year. But then they have one-on-one time, which is a blessing. And so one of the things that I decided to do is, because I really wanted to really hone in on American history, especially because of our anniversary being a special anniversary this year, our 250th, like I really wanted to really hone in on that with my 13-year-old. And so there is this series, and I can't remember if it's HBO or Netflix. I've seen it before, but it's called John Adams. And I thought my 10-year-old, it would be way over her head, but my 13-year-old, it might be a good thing. And so I decided, you know what, when the 10-year-old's at her enrichment program, we are going to watch one episode over the next several weeks until we go through the whole series. And of course, I'm going to have to edit out a couple parts here and there. For the most part, it's pretty benign. But I thought that would be something that he would enjoy, and it would make American history and the Revolution come a little bit more alive. And we've been reading, he's been reading the Carry On, Mr. Bowditch, and then we were going to start another book, Johnny Tremaine, which is about the American Revolution. And I thought this would be perfect. You know, as he and I are doing this read aloud together, we could also watch a documentary. And instead of doing any history type pages, we will watch the documentary. Like, so we're going to switch out and do something different for that subject. Perhaps you're like, we're going to play board games for math, math type board games, instead of doing math for, 2 or 3 weeks, or even just a week, right? You can do that. You can make that adjustment. But simplify your day and shrink your day to not being quite so long, and then have play the rest of the day when you're not doing academics. Okay, so I just want you to take a minute and write in your journal, if I cut my homeschool day in half, what would I keep? And normally I play music. However, I got dinged by YouTube. So I'm not going to play because I do put this on YouTube. I'm not going to play music this time, but I just want to take 1 minute and have you write, if you could cut your homeschool day in half, what would you keep? And maybe you're like, we are already doing bare minimums because we're deschooling, which is totally fine too. But I'd love to hear what you have to say. So put a little bit of time on the clock and have you write. Okay. What are some of the things that you're doing? What are some of the things that you want to keep? If you're going to keep anything, what do you want to keep? Okay. Now let's move on to number 2. And that is change the environment. What do I mean by that? No, you're not moving houses, but you want to change, before you try changing the child, you want to change something else. Change the environment. When motivation drops, we often try to fix the child, but what usually needs changing is the environment. So my sweet mom would always tell me, a change is as good as a rest. And she was so right. And so when she would feel like she was in a doldrums or kind of stuck and stagnant, she would rearrange our furniture in my house, like at home. Which I didn't realize how good that was for us until I became an adult myself. So if you can change up something that you normally do, small shifts can change the nervous system. And it doesn't have to be that you're changing the furniture. It might be you change the schedule slightly, or if you want a neuroscience trick, when you change something out of the ordinary, it shifts the brain, which is super cool, super crazy. There's a book called The Power of Moments, and they call that breaking the script. And it kind of jolts the nervous system into going, oh, and kind of wakes up the nervous system when we do something out of the ordinary. For example, it could be that you like put on candles and a beautiful tablecloth in the morning for breakfast, right? It breaks the script. So you can make any sort of small shift. Novelty reignites curiosity. So maybe you put out board games or puzzles or things like that on the table. You could do that and don't say anything to the kids, or art supplies on the table, and just let them look at things and get full of wonder and then want to do something. I did this one day. I pulled out a microscope and I just left it on the table with some microscope slides. And my kids got really curious and were like, what is this about? And then they spent several hours looking at the microscope. So try something new. Some ideas for change. You could have school in PJs. You could have school in the woods if it's warm enough. You could have school at Chick-fil-A or Taco Bell or wherever. You could make a little tent and have school with the lights off and candles or lit under a tent. You could take a break and go for a hike or have a tea time or do a stretch. You could declare a bare minimum day for the week. So just break that script. If you have any other ideas, write those down. What are some of the other things that you could do to break the script? Okay, so reflection number 2. I just want to give you a minute to think about this. What's one small change that you can do to ignite wonder? One small change. So I want you to think about that for just a minute and write down one small thing. Is it that maybe you don't usually make breakfast for the kids, but a couple of days a week you make breakfast, turn off all the lights and turn on candles, or you do that for dinner? Or maybe it's that you decide to have school outside because it's warm enough on a beautiful day. My daughter today told me, she said, Mom, the outdoors are teasing me and I just want to go swimming, and it's warm and I can't go swimming and I feel like they're taunting me. That's what she said right before, like 15 minutes ago, before I logged on. And I was like, well, I'm sorry that it's taunting you. We can go to the park when I'm done. And she's like, good, because it's taunting me. Because the weather is beautiful right now, which means we're going to probably be in a drought this summer. But anyway, so one small thing that you can do to ignite wonder. I just want to give you a minute to write that down. Let's keep going. The third thing that we can do is a quick cleansing. What do I mean by that? Now, I'm not saying deep clean your house. That you can wait for the spring for that. But there's a couple ideas. I was just introduced to one. I was at a conference this weekend, and they brought up this idea of lüften, and I'm probably totally butchering this word, but it's a German practice where twice a day they open up all the doors and the windows to get a cross breeze and to air out the stale air and to bring in fresh air. And it's not like for 10 or 15 minutes. It's like you open them all up, 1 or 2 or 3 minutes later, you shut them all. And it enables the air to switch, which invites more life into the room. So that's the first thing that you can do is daily lüften. The second thing is declutter one small area. When I am particularly feeling depressed or down, if I clean something, and it doesn't have to be big, when I clean something small, I just feel better. As a matter of fact, when I do anything, I feel better when I feel like depression coming on. So it could be a cabinet. Now, y'all, I'm not saying clean out your basement because that will make you more depressed, especially if you pull everything out and then it ends up staying there for 3 months or 6 months. Just one thing, like one small area, a cabinet, a drawer, a closet, maybe your car. Maybe it's just the trunk of your car and you've been driving around for 6 months with the things that you've been planning to drop off at Goodwill, but it's just been stuck in the trunk of your car because you're like, I'll get there. Maybe you're like, you know what, today is the day. I'm going to drop off all that stuff from Goodwill that's been driving around with me in my car for 6 months. Perhaps it's a box in your office that you're like, I need to file that paperwork in the box. I actually have 3 boxes. All right. So maybe it's a box or a desk drawer or under a child's bed. Choose one, not 5, not a whole room. Choose one area that you can declutter this week because it will help. And maybe next week you choose another small area. Maybe it's just a cabinet, right? Small. We're thinking small. Okay. So declutter something. You will feel better. So we want that cleansing. So I want you to think of one small area that you can tackle in less than an hour. I want you to think about that and write that in your notebook. And I'd love to hear thoughts. Y'all have been kind of quiet today, so I'd love to hear thoughts. All right, what do you think? What's the one small area you're like, I really need to declutter this? Or we have a bunch of minimalists on here already, and you're like, I don't need to declutter anything. It's all done. I honor you. And I esteem you highly, you minimalists. Someday I'm going to be a minimalist. Okay. Kids' clothes. Amen. Oh my goodness. When they switch and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like they just outgrew everything and I just bought this stuff and now they're in 3 sizes bigger shoes. What the heck? Yeah, that's always like, whew. And I would take one child at a time. If you try doing them all, you might be overwhelmed. Thankfully now my kids are at an age that they're not outgrowing stuff as much, but I remember when my oldest 2 were little and I came into the marriage with 2 kids, right? My husband had 2 kids and I took them on and I had full custody. We had full custody and they had, I kid you not, y'all, they had 6 bins of clothing that people had given to my husband that he kept all of it. And one day I couldn't handle keeping up on the laundry. And because we're talking once our washing machine broke. So I took all of the kids' laundry, not even mine and my husband's, just all of the 2 boys' laundry. I was pregnant with our first biological child, the other child, number 3, though, in our family. And it filled up our minivan. And it was just their clothes. And I sat and cried as I folded all their laundry at the laundromat. And then I was like, we are getting rid of it all today. And I ended up keeping like enough that fit 1 laundry basket per child. And the rest, I did a garage sale and it was all you could carry for $25. That's how many clothes we had been given by people that are like, oh, the single dad, here's more clothes. Oh my gosh. Kids' clothes. Amen. Okay, let's keep going on to number 4. You want to reconnect with your why. So February blues are often a sign of disconnection as well. It's not a failure. When we forget why we chose homeschooling, comparison and guilt will rush in. So I want you to think about why did you homeschool in the first place? What was your end goal? What was your dream and your desire for your family? Because I think sometimes we forget that. And then I want you to look at and remember that formation is more important than productivity. Now, there is a YouTuber, I will not name the YouTuber out of respect, who believes that academics and productivity are actually more important than connection and relationship. And relationship takes a back seat. I am on the other end of the spectrum. I have adult children, and connection is far more important than I believe anything else, because that's where the emotional attachment, emotional safety comes from. And if a child doesn't have that attachment and that safety and that connection, they will not flourish like long term. They won't, and it damages them. So we want to think about, like, we're building cathedrals with these children, as Sarah Mackenzie says from Teaching from Rest. So formation over productivity. I want you to remember that progress isn't always academic, which we're going to talk about here in a second. Actually, I put a little flower there because for those of you who pulled your kids, and maybe the reason that you pulled your kids from school was because of bullying, or because you just saw them retreat internally and you saw a shift happen in your child, you saw depression, you saw anxiety. And I want you to think, like, even if I just talked to a mom about this a few weeks ago, and she said, I feel like I'm not doing enough. And what if my teenage daughter is not learning enough? You know, did I make a mistake pulling her? And I said, can I ask you, I know one of the reasons that you pulled her was because you saw depression setting in. She was becoming more and more closed off. She was crying all the time. There was bullying going on. What do you see today, now that she's been at home with you and you've been with her and you've done some academics, but you haven't, you're not spending all day with academics? And she started to cry. And she said, she's bloomed and she's happy. And I said, that's progress. Would you honestly want to send her back? And she's like, oh, no, never. Right. So you have to remember, progress isn't always academic. Are they coming out of their shells? Are they blooming into these beautiful flowers that they were meant to be? Y'all, we don't have to fix everything, but we do need to connect with the kids. And eventually we'll fix what needs to be fixed. Okay, so some things to think about. I just want you to we're going to do a reflection as well, but I want you to think about and write one sentence finishing this phrase. We homeschool because, why? And then I want you to identify one thing your child is learning well that isn't on a worksheet or in a book. And the last thing is, what is one relational goal that you want for the rest of the winter? What would that look like? What would that be? Just take a second. Put it in the chat. Again, Katie, thanks for responding earlier. Y'all are very quiet today, like I said. How would you answer that question? Right, one sentence finishing this phrase. We homeschool because. What's your why? Why do you homeschool? Think about. And then the reflection I want you to think about, if no one was watching, right? If you didn't have the state to worry about with academic standards, or you weren't in fear of your neighbor being like, what are you doing all day? If no one was watching, what would your homeschool look like? Like, if you could have the dream homeschool, what would that look like? I want you to remember back to your why you decided to homeschool. Just take a second to write that down. Okay, remember. So those are the 4 things. Those are the 4 things that we want to focus on. We want to shrink the day. We don't have to power through. We can make the day shorter, and that's just fine. We can change our environment. We just have to tweak something, add something exciting, create wonder. Maybe you have school under a tent one day, right? We change things up. That's number 2. Number 3 is we do a quick cleanse. We do luften throughout the day, air out our houses, feel the air throughout our house, get fresh air in, and then declutter one thing, one small thing. And then finally 4, reconnect with why you started homeschooling in the first place and the things that are not academic that matter, that have changed for your family or for your child. Those are the 4 things I want you to remember. And just in closing here, y'all, February is not a verdict. It is a season, and it's a month, and then it's going to end, and then it's going to be spring break, and then it's going to be spring and summer, and life will come back, and then you can make new plans for the new year. It's just a season. That's it. You are not behind. You are a human. And if you feel like you're behind, I want you to ask the question, what or who am I behind? According to what or who? Finally, a gentle reset now prevents burnout later. So I just want you to remember, you are doing so much better than you think you are. Spring will be here soon. You got this, and we will talk next week. Have a good rest of your day.